Hi, I'm Greg Ninnis for interest.co.nz, and today I'm joined by Alan McMahon, who's Director of Research and Consulting for Colliers International. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you.
Alan's just put out a new report on the apartment market in Auckland, and in particular looking at how it's developing. One of the things that I notice in the report, Alan, is that there's going to be a sort of a peak of new apartments coming online as projects are completed next year, and then a bit of a drop-off in the following years, or perhaps quite a severe drop-off. Is that right?
That's right, Greg. So we've got, in the next 4 years, we've worked out there's about 6,000 apartments likely to be built. It is quite difficult to estimate because, of course, some are deferred and some will happen which we haven't heard about yet, which are a twinkle in the developer's eye. But yes, of the ones we think are likely to happen, about 6,000 in the next 4 years, but of those, a large proportion happen the latter half of this year and next year.
Right.
For example, in the CBD in that period, there's about 2,500 of those 6,000 will be in the CBD, and about 1,200, so about half of those will be next year.
Right, and this is at completed,
right. Ready
so
to,
most
ready
of these will
settle.
be sort of underway now.
Yeah, they're
really,
underway now. So they've reached their threshold. They're off the planned sales, and they're either going for a resource consent, or they're planning the construction, or they're underway.
Okay, so that suggests sort of a peak of choice for people who might be interested in buying apartments too, perhaps followed by something of a shortage.
I think so. I mean, one of the comments we make is that if you're thinking of buying, or even renting, because this applies equally to renting, an apartment, it might not pay to wait till 2017, because next year, that means completed next year. So you need to probably make a bit of a decision in the next few months. So by the end of this year,
they are being pre-sold.
They are being pre-sold, and they're being pre-sold. Typically 50-60% pre-sold, and then sometimes the developers hang back and wait till they're finished to sell the other 40 or 50% because they can usually get a higher price when they're finished. So if you want either A, to be sure you can get one, or B, get the best price, it's best to buy quite soon.
Okay. One of the other things I noticed there was you had some figures on how much they're selling for on a per square metre basis, and it said the new ones are typically coming out at around $8,000 to $10,000 a square metre, and that compares with what the average cost of houses or terraced houses at $5,500 to $7,000 per square metre. So they're on a floor area basis, they're more expensive than traditional housing. Why is that?
Well, they're more expensive to build. Much more expensive to build than standalone houses, but I guess it's also that's because what people are prepared to pay for them. And one of the reasons, there's a bit of irony in this, is that we have this quite healthy supply coming on, is that prices have gone up. So they're now feasible to develop, and the land values that are justifiable for an apartment development are similar to or better than, say, another use like offices.
Right.
So instead of an office development being built or nothing happening, now more and more sites are being used for apartments because the sale prices are higher.
Okay.
So ironically, I guess the increasing unaffordability actually is helping the supply.
Okay. It also suggests that most of what's being built is at the top end of the market. Would that be right? Or at least in the upper half.
It's pretty decent stuff. I mean, in the 90s and from sort of 2000, in the 90s mainly, in the early 2000s, a lot of the apartment developments were driven by the demand from international students or students generally. They didn't buy the apartments, investors bought the apartments and leased them, and they tended to be really small.
Yeah, these are shoe boxes.
Yeah, studios, shoe boxes, and it wasn't until 2007, I think, that the council introduced minimum sizes. So since then, it's been getting better, but of course from 2008 to 12, 13-ish, hardly any were built because they weren't feasible. So now they are being built, the minimum sizes are in place, there's more of an acceptance of this typology, apartments typology, from the public generally, and particularly from older people, people in the sort of 50s and 60s. the typical buying cohort of those better quality apartments,
Okay.
and they want a decent space.
Yes,
with 2
and
or
they've
3
probably got
bedrooms.
a pretty valuable house that they're selling up
Exactly.
to make this
Exactly.
move. Okay, so at the moment, what we're getting is really good quality apartments, but not necessarily affordable properties for first home buyers, that type of thing.
No, well, there's a bit of a myth about if you supply. Some people argue that if you supply lots of apartments, for example, the 6,000 we're getting in the next 3.5 years, that will bring the price down. It doesn't, because as long as people are able to buy at the level the developers ask for, then that's what they'll sell for. So they're affordable, but only necessarily to one person. The person who
Do you
buys.
think that could change if they start developing more apartments out and further out of away from the CBD?
It could do, but the general the answer to that is that for people to live in apartments, to be satisfied with that instead of a traditional house, they need good amenities. They need stuff to do. They need shops. They need a good active retail, bars, cafes, all that sort of stuff. And you tend to only get that in the city,
Right.
or the city fringe, or some hubs, Newmarket and Parnell and that sort of area. But so building them in the traditional suburbs is problematic.
Okay, very good. Well, look, thanks for joining us today, Alan.
Pleasure. Thank you, Greg.